Hi, everyone. This is Lauren Baker, founder of Search Engine Journal, and thanks for attending our SEJ Marketing Think Tank today. With me, I have Mr. Danny Goodwin, the executive editor of SEJ. I'll give you a chance to say hi, Danny.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. Look forward to getting good discussion going with this presentation. So get your questions ready.
Yeah, likewise. Like this is a really exciting webinar for me because it's almost an internal case study to a degree. Yet at the same time, everyone that's on will be able to learn how to really apply everything that Danny goes over and this SEO slash content knowledge to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. That's really our goal. So at SEJ, we've over the past couple of years, we've put a big emphasis into growth. A lot of that growth has been on the technical SEO side, news coverage side, and also the ability to update, refurbish, or remove old content on the site. And Search Engine Journal is 16 years old, so we have quite a lot of old posts. But before we get started, I'd like to point out a couple of things and do some housekeeping and let any of you all jump on that haven't got here yet. So Danny's presentation is going to be about a half an hour. Afterwards, we're going to open things up to Q&A. If you have questions over the course of the presentation, go ahead and type them into the question box. I already see a number of people typing in hello and hi from all over the place. Dallas, Portland, Clearwater, DC. So good to see everyone here. But while Danny's presenting, go ahead and type in your questions there. Then what we'll do is we'll be compiling the questions and going over them in a Q&A slash discussion segment at the end. And of course, like you're going to have questions and comments that pop up while we're doing our Q&A. So go ahead and Vegas, just Matt Campbell from Vegas just said hi. Go ahead and answer those or enter those questions while we're doing our Q&A as well. It's always good to have feedback, always good to have more questions pop up, always good to help the community as much as we can. Today's official hashtag is hashtag SEJ Think Tank. You can see that Mr. Danny Goodwin's Twitter handle is down there as well. So go ahead and feel free to tell all your friends that are currently missing out on this great presentation where you are, what you're learning, et cetera, and increase the FOMO as much as possible. So on that note, I'll hand things over to you, Danny.
All right, thank you, Lauren. All right, let's kick off our discussion. So today, as Lauren mentioned, we'll be talking about why and how you must improve or remove your old content. So let's get started here. And just this is about me, as Lauren already mentioned. I am the executive of Search Engine Journal. I've been in the industry for over 10 years now. And yeah, just been sort of covering things for that amount of time, and before that I was in journalism. So I've basically been creating content my whole adult life. So I yeah, look forward to sharing what we've been doing at Search Engine Journal here in the last 20 months. So let's get started. But before we get started, just a little warning for any of the squeamish in the crowd. We're going to be talking about some bad and scary content. So if you have any, if you don't have a strong stomach, you may want to think about leaving now. If not, I promise things will all be good in the end. So let's start our story with Google, and that's where most of our stories begin. And their mission since the beginning has been to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And nothing there on the Google end has changed, but what has changed is this little thing called content marketing. Around the time of the good old original Google Panda update, a lot of businesses and brands really bought into the idea finally that content is king, and they started creating all sorts of content. They created great content, good content, but also some pretty average and crappy content. And this is sort of the state of things right now. We're getting a lot of content being published every day by brands and businesses, but most of it isn't really all that useful. In fact, a lot of it's kind of redundant and useless. And we know that Google knows about 130 trillion individual pages on the web, and that's as of November of 2016. So we know it's grown even higher than that. but Google doesn't index every page. In fact, the index only contains hundreds of billions of web pages, and that's according to their 2019 figures. So there's a lot of content out there, but Google doesn't index all of it. They're filtering out a lot of stuff, and you don't want that to be you. So today I come to you with a new mission for all content marketers and content creators. Give Google only your best content, make it optimized, useful, and relevant. It's time that we change what we're doing and just start thinking about content in a new way. And that's what this presentation will be all about. So one of the questions we had at Search Engine Journal is, could some of our old content actually be hurting us? Could some of it actually be a little cursed and dragging down our overall authority? So we decided to investigate. Now, on Google's side, they say that old content won't hurt you. They've even warned us that removing content can be dangerous, but our results say otherwise. So for the last 20 months, as executive editor, I've been sort of with the team hacking and slashing our way through our old archives. And the results are really good. Page views and organic traffic are up over 60% year over year. So yeah, the rest of this presentation, I'll talk about the process that we used, and hopefully you can take what we have done and apply it to your own websites. And the process all begins with auditing and evaluating your content. So when I think of content, there are basically three buckets of content. There's content that helps you, there's content that does absolutely nothing for you, and there's even some content that can hurt you. So we need to figure out which of those buckets that all of our content fits into. Now, when it comes to content, and a site, as Lauren mentioned, we've been around since 2003. So it almost became like a situation of like a horrific hoarder house where, we've been creating all this content over the years, and it got really messy and disorganized and was, sort of just a giant mess. So your very first step when you want to start figuring out what to do with your content is figure out what you have. So you got to crawl your content. So these are some options that you can use to crawl your content and figure out what you have on your website. It's not a recommendation for me on any of them, but choose whatever one works for you. And there's even more options. There's the URL there from elevate.com, their ultimate guide to SEO crawlers. But ultimately, here are the 8 important things you want to figure out after you get through the crawling process. You want to know, is your title optimized and does it have a reader benefit? Is your URL SEO friendly or does it need to change? Who wrote your content? Was it written by an expert or an authority? When was it published? Is it still fresh or is it getting out of date? You also want to know how many reads it's gotten. The more the better, obviously, here, because that's a sign of good content that connected with your audience. Now, word count isn't necessarily a sign of low quality content, but it could potentially indicate quality issues, so it's good to know this. You also want to know your total number of inbound and internal links. And finally, you want to know your trust flow and citation flow. And if you're not familiar with those, that's a term that Majestic uses, one of their metrics to basically give a score to your quality score and your link equity. So now that we're past, that's really the easy part. So now we got to move on to analyzing the content we have on the website. So we want to know the difference between high quality and low quality content. So here's how I typically define what quality content is. Should be accurate, original, readable, should be mobile friendly, shareable, visual, should answer questions, solve problems, be entertaining, should be informative, should be inspiring, or educational. Now, does your content have to be all of these things all the time? Absolutely not. But generally, you want to tick off as many of these things as possible because all of that will increase the odds that you're more likely to have successful content. Now, on the other hand, guys, low quality content is super scary. So what is low quality content to me? So this is a type of content that doesn't have a target audience. You don't really know who's reading your stuff. It doesn't have a goal or purpose. Everything you do should have this. You should know, I'm creating this to get shares or to get links or to rank, whatever the case may be. You need to have a purpose for every piece of content that you're creating. You don't want to just be creating content for the sake of, we need to create content. Another sign of low quality content, it's not optimized. So in this case, it may be like a terrible headline or a terrible meta description, or even the content itself is just written poorly. So if you have these first three things, ultimately your content is going to be unsuccessful. And for me, the real difference between high quality and low quality content is whether it succeeded with your audience. But that's just me. So what does Google say about quality content? So this is a page that doesn't actually exist anymore, but Google is advising people for these elements as of 2017. They say that quality content is useful and informative. It's more valuable and useful than other websites. It's credible, it's high quality, and it's engaging. And please note on there the usage of the word useful, because that is a word that comes up a lot. And another thing that you've probably heard a lot about lately, I know I have, is EAT. And this comes from Google's Search Evaluator guidelines. So what is EAT? Essentially, EAT is your expertise. This is what's unique about your website. It's your skills, your information, or your knowledge. It's your authority. Other people know about you and they recognize your skills or your knowledge. And finally, the T is trust. People believe what you think, say, or do, and they also feel secure buying from you or endorsing you. So if you're missing those elements, you have what Google considers inadequate EAT, and that's a bad thing. So you want to avoid that. Other things to watch out for, and this is all, again, according to the Google Rater guidelines, you want to avoid main content quality that is low. You want to make sure you don't have an unsatisfying amount of main content. If you're relying on sort of clickbait tactics in terms of exaggerated or shocking or misleading titles, that's another sign to Google of low quality content. You also want to avoid the case where ads or supporting content is distracting from your main content. And another interesting one was if there's not enough information about your website or who created your content, that can be another sign of low quality. Or even if the website or the content creator has a negative reputation. So you got to watch out for all of these things. So if you know you have a lot of low quality content, what should you do with it? Should you remove it or improve it? What does Google say? So as typical, we look to the search engine reps. So Google's Gary, he, on behalf of Google, says that he doesn't recommend removing content, rather adding more high quality content. Basically making your thin content thicker. And never remove content that someone might find useful. These are all things that I absolutely agree with. Google, Gary, again, a couple years later, talked about removing content. He said that there's no guarantees that you'll see any positive effect from removing content. He went so far as to say that, if your content isn't showing up in the search results, that content isn't indexed. So if it isn't indexed, it's not going to hurt your website. Okay, so just remember that as we go forward, because we may sort of contradict that in a moment. Google's John Mueller also has talked about removing content as well. He says that, he advises to improve rather than remove it because theoretically only your rankings can go up by improving stuff. He sort of goes against this idea that, some people think that content removals will help. So I wonder where people get that idea that removing bad content can help your website. Oh, right, it was from Google back in 2011, right after the Panda update came out. This is an article I wrote back in 2011. Very first line there, look at that, improve it or remove it. And here is that quote in question from a Googler, straight from Google. It's important for webmasters to know that low quality content on part of a site can impact a site's ranking as a whole. In fact, removing low quality pages or moving them to a different domain could help your rankings for the higher quality content. So that's interesting. So we have a little bit of a conflict going on. Which one is right? Well, stay tuned and we'll let you know. And all this is really important because there's a little thing that I call content inequality that a lot of sites have. So what is this? Basically, in 2017, I ran the numbers and I figured out that the top 3% of posts on Search Engine Journal drove as much traffic as the bottom 97% combined. So here we're talking basically a few hundred posts are driving as much as several thousand posts. And so, I mean, logically, it makes sense that if you can reduce that black portion as much as possible and grow that green part, you're going to see a content explosion, right? It makes sense logically. So we decided to test this out, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But so the other thing we need to talk about is how do we assign actual metrics to these vague statements from Google, and how do we actually decide what is quality content? So here are 5 things that I would recommend you use. And this is what we sort of looked at with Search Engine Journal. You want to look at how many page views your content gets. You want to look at the amount of organic traffic it's currently getting. You want to look at how many links it's gained over time. Is it driving any conversions anymore? And finally, how much engagement is getting. Ultimately, when we're talking about content, though, there are a lot of variables that influence the success of your content. So you want to use your best judgment whenever you're evaluating your content, because there are many reasons why a piece of content may fail or succeed. There's a lot of competition out there. It could be the time of year. It could be so many things that impact whether something is successful or not. So if you have an idea for something that you think should do well or should have done well but didn't, try it again in a different way. But you don't also want to fall into the trap where you're basically doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So again, use your best judgment. So now that we've sort of started evaluating stuff, it's time to decide, should your content stay or should it go? And guys, I figured out there are basically 5 fates for all of your existing content. So I'm going to walk you through each of these right now. And since we're all marketers, we love to make personas for all of our things. So I've decided to give our content types a persona name. So please meet Lorraine, our hero. So this is our first fate. So this sort of content is information that's accurate or it has historic value. It's consistently getting good traffic and engagement. It's attracted many quality links and social shares over the years. Currently ranking in position 1 to 3 and still generating conversions. This all sounds pretty good, right? In fact, it is. Congratulations, you found a content unicorn. There are no changes needed here. If you're already ranking number 1 for some piece of content, what else are you going to do to try and squeeze more out of it? You have a higher chance of screwing up a good thing. So focus on other content where you can have bigger wins. Ooh, scary. Okay, now we're getting into the kind of the scarier content here. So this sort of content we'll call Carolyn is Possessed. So for this fate, this sort of content is getting consistent traffic, or it used to. It has earned some valuable links and shares through time. It's still ranking on page 1 of Google, but maybe it's been slipping recently. And these last 2 bullet points are sort of the keys for identifying this sort of content. It's getting few or no conversions, and the engagement is below average. So is it time to call in the priest here and exorcise the demons? Absolutely. So in this case, we want to update or refresh this sort of content. We want to make all the information updated so it's accurate and up to date. The key thing here, make it better than your SERP competitors. Make it more useful. And ideally, with this sort of content, you want to keep it on the same URL so you can retain whatever authority that you've built up to it over time. On to our next fate. So this is Janet S. Possessed. So I wonder if they're related. But anyway, so this sort of content, This is the content that's currently getting little or no traffic. It's not getting any links or shares. It's not ranking on page one at all. Maybe it's not even indexed anymore. Have you checked lately? And also it's not getting any conversions. That sounds pretty bad, guys. So maybe time to call in the exorcist again. Indeed it is. So it's time to do a content rewrite on if you have this sort of content. So in this case, you may have a useful, relevant, or helpful topic, but maybe it's just written badly, and rewriting it will make it that much better. So you want to start from scratch here, typically. Just start over, make sure all your information is up to date and great. And in this case, we're probably going to want to 301 redirect our old post to our new post on a new and optimized URL, one that you can reuse over time and keep gaining authority with. And since we're talking about redirects now, I just want to share a little bit of information from this article here on how Google or how 301 redirects pass PageRank. So 3 things that you need to know about 301s and PageRank. So Google can forward PageRank through 301 redirects. However, not all 301 redirects pass 100% PageRank. And this is the key point here. So if you want a 301 redirect to pass 100% PageRank, the new page has to closely match the topic of the old page. So that means basically if you're writing on topic A, it has to be the same topic. You can't start writing about topic B or C and redirect that post to the new one, or you're going to lose some of that the authority and the page rank that has been built up over time. Okay, on to our next fate. Annabelle, the doll from hell. So what happens here? So in this case, you have multiple articles that are all on the same topic. So maybe one piece of content is getting some of the traffic and your others are getting little or none. You're also not attracting any new links or shares with this content. You might not be ranking on page 1, or if you are ranking on page 1, it could be the wrong page. Maybe it's the one you don't want actually ranking on page 1. Another thing you might see is 2 pages competing on the same SERP for their query. And when this happens, this is a sign that Google can't figure out which page to rank. So it's almost like A/B testing to see, which one it should be ranking for that query. So these are all bad. You need to make it super clear to Google, which page you want to be ranking. So here is an actual example of this in action. So back in 2017, we had, for the keyword content audit, 6 articles competing with each other. This is what keyword cannibalization looks like, basically. So you don't want this. So in a little bit, we'll talk about what we did to clean this up. But I just wanted to show you what this actually looks like and how, funny enough, when we were doing a content audit, our content audit articles were all competing with each other. So we'll talk about that more in a moment. But first, I want to share this with you. John Mueller has talked about combining content, actually. So basically, what he's saying here is if you can combine, 2, 3, 4, whatever number of weak pages you have, and merge them all into one, that's a huge relevancy signal. So Google's more likely to rank that one really strong page versus having, multiple pages that are all competing with each other. So back to our fate for this. So what do we want to do if we have this issue where stuff is competing with each other? We need to consolidate content. So you want to create one awesome piece of content. Typically, you're going to start from scratch with when you start creating, but you can feel free to reuse any useful or existing content from your old posts. But ultimately, it's about making it better than your competitors again. And then in this case, you're going to redirect however many old posts you have to your new URL that is SEO friendly. Oh, this is the scary stuff, guys. Okay, this is our worst kind of content, the Valak Tita-filer. So this is what we call thin content. So this is the sort of stuff that's poorly written. It's maybe off topic for your website. Sometimes syndicated stuff can, be really thin content, and some of the more extreme stuff is stolen or plagiarized. So you don't want any of this stuff on your website. Other signs of thin content: it has absolutely no historical significance, very low number of page views, and little or no traffic, links, shares, conversions, or engagement. And here's an actual example from Search Engine Journal. Lauren Baker's one of his favorite old articles that we published. Kidding, of course. But yes, this poor author has been added into the witness relocation program, and her identity obscured to protect her identity here. Because she wrote this lovely article called "What the Ants Taught Me About Successful Internet Marketing," and it was a flop. It was written terribly, and it got very few shares and very few reads. So for an article that's about successful internet marketing, this article was a total bust. So what do we do with all this stuff? Kill it with fire. Delete it from your website or de-index it from search engines. It's that simple. You don't want this stuff on your website because this is the stuff that will hurt you. So now that we've done that, and we're going to skip over the parts about how to actually write the content because that's basically a webinar on its own. So we're going to skip ahead. I'm going to assume that you've created some of the most awesome content, and now it's time to measure how we've done. So for this part, we're actually going to share some actual internal stuff from Search Engine Journal. And we're going to actually start with the worst case scenario. So I wanted to share a real case of where we rewrote something and it didn't go as well as we want. It wasn't cataclysmic, but still not ideal. So we had this post that was ranking the top 3 for the keyword for the query PayPal alternatives. We're getting about 11,000 page views a month as of 2017. But then in April 2018, this post got hit by the evil Google and their broad core algorithm update, and sort of dropped our traffic pretty significantly, basically in half there. So, this obviously flagged something for us, and we decided, hey, maybe it's time to rewrite this. So that's what we did. So we republished it in October. It's now ranking in position 4 for PayPal alternatives. Again, it's not terrible, but ideally we want to be in the top 1, 2, or 3. And it's only getting 3,000 page views per month so far this year. In terms of why, there are many reasons. There are many changes here. We changed the headline, we changed the URL, new author, totally new content. So everything changed. So it's hard to nail down exactly why this happened, or it could be even just a case where a competitor came along and did something better. So this is definitely one of those things where it's a work in progress and we have more to optimize. So, and this is the analytics of what it looked like. So as you can see, we were doing really good till March, and then had our drop in April. We implemented the 3-1 redirect in October, got a nice little bump there, but again, sort of the decline kept on happening. So this is one of those cases that's to be continued. So that's really the worst case scenario that I could find in looking through all the stuff that we've been working on. And so as I see here, this process goes more right than wrong. In fact, 8 of the top 10 pages with the highest page views in 2018 for Search Engine Journal were all rewrites. And we've seen posts increase traffic by 2 times, 5 times, even 10 times or more. So this is impressive stuff. We've also seen that featured snippets can be passed from old to new content as well. So I'm going to now walk you through examples of all the different things that we did with the various fates that we talked about just a moment ago. So let's first talk about content refreshing or content updating. So the original version of this post we published in 2016. It was obviously the 2017 version of the marketing calendar. Now, where it's a case where you have a post like this, nobody's going to start, once 2018, 2019 hits, no one's going to be looking for 2017 or 2018 calendars anymore. So you want to update this stuff. So the first version did well, so we decided to update it for 2018. The old post got 22,000 reads. It was ranking pretty good, 1 or 2. And it was getting about 2,000 pages a month and built up some good link equity. So things were looking good. And then when we updated it, 2 times improvement. Basically went from 2,000 page views a month up to 4,000, 5,000 a month. So more than 2 times improvement. So, this is just, case where, simple stuff like this, keeping track of stuff that's like maybe year-based, if you do anything like that, a simple update could maybe increase your traffic by 2 times. It's that simple. So here's another example. So this is an example of a content rewrite that we did. So our original post, which I actually think may have been written by Lauren Baker back in 2008 on this topic, it had done really well.
Yeah. Discussing this topic 10 years before it became a talking point of
Yep.
the SEO industry again.
Indeed.
So yeah, it's one of the oldest arguments in the space.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and as noted, yeah, it's a popular argument, so it had racked up 50,000 reads. But the problem was it was no longer ranking on page 1 for us, and it was basically getting 50 page views a month. So it still had, acquired a lot of good link equity over the years. So what are we going to do? We're going to rewrite it, and that's what we did last February. And here's the results. So as I said, 50 page views a month, and of late, we've been hitting 4,000 or more page views a month with this article just by a simple case of rewriting. That's an 80 times improvement, guys. This is like probably our highest, our biggest bang for this whole process of this one post here. So this was huge for us. And, yeah, what else can I say except the numbers speak for themselves there. So back to the content audit. So this is the one we had talked about earlier. So we had 6 posts that were all written between 2012 and 2017. Basically gotten a combined 2,000 reads for us in that time period. None of them were ranking on page 1. They're basically, 20 page views a month for us. Some link equity, but not much of anything to note. So we had one of our contributors start from scratch with a brand new post, and we published it last February, and this is the result here. So again, 20 or 30 page views a month, and now we're getting 200, 300 page views a month. So that's a 10 times improvement. So you can probably already start to see, like, if we're increasing by 2 times here, 80 times there, 10 times there, all these multiplications are really starting to add up, right? Yeah, they absolutely are. Okay, next. So I talked about really briefly the featured snippet, how you can pass them from old to new. So let's talk about that one. We had an original post from 2014 that we rewrote last April, and here's what that looked like. So on the left, you can see the original featured snippet that we had earned there from Google. So we knew we were going to be publishing the post, so once that published, we implemented our 301 redirect on the old post to the new, and within 24 hours, Google had updated the featured snippet, and we retained it. So the key here, if you have a featured snippet, and you do for a certain piece of content, really make sure you think about the format that you use. For example, in this case, we had numbered subheads or H2s, so we wanted to make sure we kept that. So if hopefully you're familiar with sort of like the how-to of featured snippets, but if not, definitely do some time researching that. We have some great posts on Search Engine Journal about how to win more featured snippets, so check those out. And then finally, so just to revisit our de-indexing and deleting. So we wanted to answer this question: is it dangerous? So we de-indexed 900 posts. That means just basically removing them from the search engines, and we deleted another 4,000. And this is basically what we figured out. So it all depends on these 4 questions. Is your content getting any traffic? Does it have any link equity? Is it ranking on page 1? Will anybody miss it if it's gone? If you answer yes to any of these questions, then maybe, removing content is dangerous. But if the answer to all of these things is no, I see absolutely no reason why you shouldn't remove your old content, because it has no value or use. And this is, again, I let the numbers do the talking. I can say all I want, but I think these numbers say it all. So the 2 years prior to when I started, from July 2015 to 2017, you can see on the left there, we started at 960,000. And by the June 2017, 890,000 pages. So actually, even though we're still putting out a lot of content, the pages weren't there. So that's why when I took over in July 2017, we started really looking at, figuring out what to do with all this old content. So we started playing around with all these different things, with rewriting and redirecting and all that. And from there, we basically started by January. Well, okay, so just to back up, so we did like a few test cases for this. We saw some really good wins, and we started really buying into this, and then really went all in. So by January of 2018, we hit 1 million page views for the first time in a long time, and we haven't looked back since. In fact, in January of this year, we had 1.7 million page views. In February, we probably would have topped that, but February is a short month, so given us 2 more days, we would have topped that. And I just looked at our analytics this morning for this month. That's sort of some breaking news, but we've already topped 1.7 million this month, and we still have a few days to go. So this is like that strong and steady growth that you'd always want to see with your content. And basically, if you look back to July of 2017, we had just under 20,000 pages indexed in Google. As of today, we still have just under 20,000 pages indexed in Google. But our content is going much further now, obviously. We've basically almost doubled our traffic. So based on this, I say let your content cleansing begin. And sort of just summing up the whole process, it's a really simple process, but there's a lot of work to it. It all starts with your audit. You got to figure out what content you have. Then you got to evaluate it. You got to improve whatever content you can, whether it's a rewrite or consolidating or updating. But if you can't update or if you can't improve it, just remove it. De-index it from the search engines and delete it from your website. You can go whichever way you want there. And with everything you do, you want to measure it. So as you go through this process, you want to make sure you nail down whatever metrics matter most to your company. I told you, what Search Engine Journal looked at. That may be different for you depending on what space or niche you're in. So you're going to have to apply that to your own area that you operate in. But ultimately, let data decide the fate of your content. We have this problem where, I've seen it so many times where it's like, I created this great content, and everybody says that they're creating great content, but if it's not producing results, it's not great content. So just take your personal bias. It's not about how much time or effort you put into it or how much money you put into it. It's the result. So let the data decide. And for as we leave or sum up today, I want to leave you with this thought. So there are 2 ways you can go as you're creating content heading forward. You can be a content victim or a content hero. So the victims take the easy road. They sort of just, these are the people who just keep creating content, churning content out, no strategy, year after year after year. And they wonder why their content isn't working. But meanwhile, you have another choice. You can be a content hero. And there's a lot of steps involved with, really making a content strategy that works. And these are the steps that I've sort of outlined for you. So it really all starts with figuring out who your audience is, making sure every piece of content you create has a purpose or a goal. You want to always demonstrate your expertise. Make sure that the piece of content has value to the consumer. Always want to optimize for visibility, which is key there. And once you get to this point, all these things start to pay off with increased authority. The more authority you get, the more rankings you get, the more traffic you get, the more links you get, the more engagement you get. And as all the stuff just adds up and adds up to greater and greater things. Eventually where you get to the point where you're building the trust and you're getting conversions and you're generating the loyalty that you want. So as you head forward with your content creation, I hope that you will decide to be not a content victim, but a content hero. And that's all I've got for you. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Let's open
Danny.
up to Q&A.
Great stuff. Yeah, let's all be content Bruce Stearns and not trying to think of a victim from your horror movie themed deck. Let's not all be those folks at the beginning of Friday the 13th movies.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of really good questions that came in. Thanks so much. Everyone, please feel encouraged to continue to drop questions. it's going to be nearly impossible to answer all of them within a 20-minute time frame. So what I'm going to do is try to, in the honor of consolidating content, I'm going to consolidate this content that you've sent in the form of questions into some that will answer a lot of them. First question, why did you use Thanos for your best judgment image?
Well, it just seemed fitting with, if you're going to wipe out half your content, who better to wipe out half your content than Thanos?
Yes, but Thanos does it randomly. Don't do that. So,
Or does he?
I don't know. Okay.
Ah.
Next question. What leads you to make the decision to either delete or de-index a piece of outdated or unuseful content?
So deleting is typically sort of the more toxic stuff, or the stuff that you don't want to be ranking for anyways. So that may be the case where it's something that's off topic or something you wrote maybe, I don't know, probably maybe pre 2012, because I've noticed through some of the stuff, the outside work that I do, a lot of the older content is just written terribly. It's really short, terrible headlines, it's really off topic stuff. So anything that you don't want to be found for, or anything that you would sort of be embarrassed about if someone stumbled across it, that's a sign that you want to just get it off your website. The de-indexing stuff is more just a case of, let's see, a good example might be maybe you're ranking well for, I want to say like a category page, but you don't want to be found for a category page, but actually like maybe a product or a blog post or whatever the case may be. So you may want to just consider de-indexing that from the search engines.
Yeah, I'd say like deleting means it doesn't exist at all. De-indexing, it still exists.
Yeah,
You're just de-indexing it from Google and Bing, right? But
right.
people will be able to find historic content using other methods. Like,
Correct. Yeah, basically it's an on-site thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's specifically content that you're not going to 301. So like in Danny's example with ants and what the ants taught us about digital marketing, there's no use for that.
No.
So there's no reason to 301. It didn't have any good inbound links. The content was kind of off. So it just makes sense to destroy it.
Yep.
And then delete or de-index is really up to you at the end of the day. Do you plan on utilizing that content again? Do you want to de-index it temporarily while you're shifting it into another piece, something like that? That's really up to you. Same thing, we got a lot of questions about what's the difference between a 404 and a 410. A 410, when you implement that, you're giving Google an immediate message that has been taken down. Whereas when Google finds a 404, they will hit it again as it being a 404 error and seeing if that page is still up. 404 and 410s have pretty much the same effect in Google after a medium to long-term period, but not right when it's taken down. 410 tells Google immediately, hey, I purposefully took this down. Don't crawl it again. And that's really the big difference there. Next question. Isn't it good to keyword cannibalize because you own more real estate on the SERP? So you had some examples of a couple of different posts appearing on page 1 or maybe page 2, something like that, and bundling. So the question is it a good thing or a bad thing? And if it's a bad thing, could you please go into a little bit more detail why?
That's really just going to vary depending on what your goal is. If you do want more SERP real estate, that's fine. But if it's a case where, say, maybe you have a certain piece of content where you go, this is what we want to be found for. That's really the difference. It really just comes down to your individual strategy. Like if say for example, like we've had the case where we've been trying to get a certain piece of content, which is an SEO guide ranked for a long period of time, but we were getting a blog post instead. So we wanted to figure out how we could get the guide ranked versus the blog post. So that's really what it comes down to. Like, if you have like this really something that's high value, because in the case of a guide, we try to convert those into leads or get people on our email list. So we'd much rather have that page ranking where people might get onto our email list versus a regular blog post, which isn't quite as obvious as a call to action or conversion action that we're interested in. So that might be just one example. Lauren, you might have other examples of where that might be more relevant.
One example I have, this is from experience, I'm not saying to do it right now and it's going to help your site, is that in certain instances where we've had results bundled, like in maybe the 8-9 position or the 11-12 position, if we can get one of those results out of the SERPs, we've seen the other shoot up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Right.
almost seems to me that instead of Google A/B split testing, which we'll sometimes see in one position where one day it will be SEO Guide 1, the next day it will be SEO Guide 2, when it bundles and the SEO Guide 1 is in position 8, SEO Guide 2 in position 9, and one of those is taken out, usually it shoots up. That's not necessarily the case for the SEO guide, but I've seen that with multiple different client projects that I've worked on. So if you see that you're bundling, especially lower in the results or in an instance where you're below the fold or almost on the brink of making page 1, look at ways that you can reduce what Google's trying to figure out in terms of what's the most relevant page of content for that query string on your site and see what you can do to better differentiate. I also see this a lot in e-commerce and products where you have multiple product descriptions and titles that are very, very similar, and those can be bundled up as well. But in a lot of cases, you're not ranking. You may be bundled, and it might be nice to have more real estate, but if you can get rid of one of those and shoot up in the rankings, then that's a great thing to see happen. Does the publish date, does it the date stamp within WordPress on a post matter when you're updating your content?
Well, typically when we update something, we'll republish it. So um, I don't think it really matters because we've typically seen that when we republish something, Google will grab the new pub date. So it hasn't been a concern for us. I know that for other sites it could be, but we haven't had any issues with that.
Yeah, I would say to add to that, I would say if you're going to change your publishing date, make sure you dramatically change your content, at
Yes,
least by like 30%, 35%.
especially near the start too, like at the top, so it's clear from the start it's something different.
Yeah, always have a line in there too that's been updated.
Yep.
Just note we've updated this content so and so date. There's some reasons for that. One, I've seen sites like I've had people call me for consulting that have they said, well, we heard that if you update the timestamp or the date stamp on post, then you'll rank higher. So we went and we updated all of the dates on our blog posts to the past month, and they all dropped. So that's a
Mm.
pure manipulation play,
Yep.
and I'm pretty sure Google is very good at picking that up.
Yep.
Another thing too is that if you are a publisher, like I've seen some comments and questions in here from folks that are publishers, or they work for print publishing companies and bringing them online digitally, you probably have syndication. So if you're updating your post, everywhere you syndicate that, by syndication I mean like, for example, we had every time SEJ posts, we have a number of sites that naturally pick us up because of our RSS feed, things like that. I had a publisher that there was a InStyle magazine had done a post or an article and linked to a client, and about 4 days ago, we started seeing that pop up in our alerts. Not only from InStyle, because what they had done, they had written something about a year ago or so, and then they had updated it recently. But we also started seeing it pop up from like Yahoo, MSN, ATT.net, like all of these other sites that syndicate that content. So keep that in mind too. When you're republishing something, always let people know that you republished to put together good content, because you're syndicating it. It might go out to your emails if you have that set up on your blog, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, next questions are kind of getting a little bit meatier. Let's see here. If a client has poor quality original content, but has plagiarized high quality content, should we wait for them to improve their poorly written content before we have them remove their stolen content? Okay, so,
Ooh,
yeah. Um, I would say, one, you're going to want to get rid of the stolen content
absolutely.
before you get legally in trouble.
Hmm.
And if you find that for some, I'm not sure what you mean by stolen, but if you've somehow taken over their canonicals or somehow rank for the rank above the original source of the content, um, that's actually a good sign for you. So what you might want to do is take down that previous content that somehow you stole, which is ethically wrong, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
and rewrite that to be something original because you're probably going to
Yeah.
rank really high for it anyway, right?
Right. Yep. Totally. Yeah. I mean, if you're ranking for plagiarized stuff, I would suggest honestly just rewriting it as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't want to de-index it or delete it, but yeah.
And we have a lot of different publishing partners that we in the past we've republished their posts on SEJ almost in the same way that you might republish on a Medium or LinkedIn or something like that. And there have been instances where we've taken over the rankings, but I think a lot of that has to do with the way that the host site has set up their canonicals in the past, and
Mm.
canonical optimization is a totally different thing. So we'll get into that. Uh, many of the sites that I work with are websites of print magazines, and much of the older and outdated content is archived material from the print edition.
Hmm.
So should they keep that historic content, or is it harming their sites at the end of the day?
Hmm. That's a good question. Um, I guess, do you, well, I don't know. I guess we can't ask the person, but are we thinking this is like PDFs or what is the sort of content that would be archived? I'm trying to figure out what it means technically.
Yeah, I'm not getting a response there,
Okay.
but I would say if it's older content and it's currently factually irrelevant
Mm-hmm.
and factually wrong, and you're seeing that drop, you're going to want to probably invest into updating that or seeing or rewriting it into a new piece, and then naturally integrating it into that piece. If you're a print publication, you probably have roadblocks internally, like, well, we have to, if we're going to write that, we have to, you know, do it on the print version
Mm-hmm.
before online. So I would definitely go down that route, but feel free to hit up our team or Danny on any of our case studies that we've shared. By the way, to answer a lot of questions, we are going to be sharing this presentation and the video after after the webinar. Okay. We have previous blogs regarding SEO trends for prior years. Example, SEO trends for 2016. Would you recommend redirecting these year-based blogs to the most update version, which would be SEO trends in 2019?
Good question. I can see the argument either way for this one, because we actually do something similar for ours, where we have, I think for the last 3 or 4 years on Search Engine Journal, we've done an SEO trends piece, and we've kept the older ones. So typically, I feel like for a case where it's like a trends piece, that has some historical relevance because you can look back on that or reference it at some point. But the thing that I would recommend, one of two things, is create sort of like a durable
If I,
URL. Whoop, sorry, is it okay to go?
you're fading for me a little bit. I'm not sure if you
Oh,
were for anywhere else, so keep
oh,
on going.
sorry. Yeah, so like one way you can go is to do a more durable URL where you just have like, for example, the slug SEO trends, and then you can sort of post the, say the 2019 version of that on that. And then once you hit 2020, you can cut and paste that, put it on a different sort of archived version, and then you can link from the old one to the new one and the new one to the old one. Sort of keep it alive. That's sort of what one thing you could do. But yeah, I mean, in most cases, the simplest thing is just to make sure that, if anyone lands on the 2018 version right at the start, you're saying, hey, if you're looking for the 2019 version of this article, here's the link to that. That's probably the two ways that you could go with that for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would stick with like something generic like SEO trends for this year, and always focus that current year on that page, and then as that gets archived, then put together, hey, this was 2018, this was 2017, this is 2019. So
Yeah.
pretty much the same route. The whole date thing is really interesting. Super Bowl is a good example. Halloween is a good example. So traditionally, when you're looking for Super Bowl queries on Google, you'll get information for the previous Super Bowl up to about November. And then around November, it flips. So you'll get information for the upcoming Super Bowl after that, because people are basically preparing for things like Super Bowl tickets, Super Bowl parties, where they're going to watch the Super Bowl in a couple months, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of flips. So really keep tabs on seasonality, especially if you're a seasonal business, and when to do this. We like to pre-write about a month out before we start to see those historic flips, and you can track those historic flips accordingly throughout your analytics as well. Next question. We will be updating a bunch of content that is research results. I got a couple of questions about research results, actually, Danny. Is it better for us to update the existing page with new research results, or create new pages with the new results? So it sounds like maybe this company had done some research in the past. They want to update that with some new data. Should they just republish it with a new result, or just update what's already ranking in the past?
That's an interesting one. It's sort of like the SEO trends idea. For research, I would tend to think that you want to create one page, and then update that page. And again, if the previous year's research is still relevant in some way, you could archive it on a different URL. But again, I would probably go with the route of making sure you create one optimized URL that you want to rank for, and that you can, if it's a yearly thing where you're going to update it every year, you're just going to keep theoretically attracting more authority and more links over time to that same URL, and you'll rank better or keep your ranking. So that would be the route I would personally take for that.
Okay, great. So next question. By the way, we have a lot of questions about like how much content should people write, like how many words. That really depends industry to industry, page by page. If you're an SEMrush user, I would highly recommend that you utilize their SEO content template, which gives you a competitive analysis of the amount of words, the amount of key phrases, modifications, et cetera, are being used within your vertical, right? So if everyone's writing 500 words within your vertical, you might want to write a little bit more. If everyone's just using words, try to use videos in addition to words, or maybe some images to help people stay on the site longer, see what people are doing from a CTA perspective, stuff like that. So I wanted to answer those questions with that. Also, a lot of questions about EAT. Could you please, it's almost lunchtime here, but could you please go a little bit deeper into what EAT means and why it's relevant from a content perspective?
Well, the way I look at it is, if Google considers this stuff important, then you should as well. And it's not really, so I don't want to get into the part where it's like EAT impacts your SEO or your rankings, because it's not a direct thing. But if you do the stuff that's in the documents around your expertise, authority, and trust, and building all that stuff up, you should naturally like get a better reaction from your audience or from your customers, and that will get rewarded by the search engine. It's kind of the indirect benefit from that. And generally, you just want to look as good as you possibly can. You want to look like the best resource or the best option for people when they land on your site. So, you just want to always consider raising the bar on the quality of all the content you publish and everything that you do. So that's what you should always strive for.
If you search EAT and SEO in Google, you'll find a pretty in-depth post that Marie Hayes has done. Her website is mariehayes.com. And at the very top, it says last updated February 19th, 2019, which is a good thing. I'd like to see the update after the last core update. But it's really in depth about how the EAT concept is used in the Google Quality Rater guidelines, the your money or your life concept, where medical sites, legal sites, et cetera, should have experts writing on them, and then how to really fortify yourself as an expert. We just added a lot of schema to Search Engine Journal's author pages specifically to back this up. We want Google and Bing to see that there are real experts and authors writing on our sites, what their backgrounds is, what company they work for, what their positions are, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a really big component of this. So go ahead and read into it. And I think that's just the future of authorship.
Yep.
My authorship never went away. Google authorship did. authorship still exists, even though Google Plus doesn't. How do you up your authorship cred? Read this article. So go to mariehayes.com/eat, but make sure you do it after lunch. This marks the hour spot. So Danny, do you have any more time?
I'm good to go. Yep.
Okay, so let's extend this by about 5 more minutes. We still have 350 odd people here. So next question is, if I no index a single post using Yoast rather than remove it, do I need to do anything other than change it in Yoast?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that. Lauren, do you know?
No, I don't. I typically no index it in Yoast, and then if I see, well, first of all, if you have a pretty complex blog, you've probably done interlinking in the past. What you don't want to do is have internal links pointing to non-existent or de-indexed content, because Google's always going to be hitting that over and over again.
Mm.
You also don't want to have internal links pointing to 301s all the time and stuff like that, because it's just server load. So clean up your internal links. So one thing, if you're de-indexing or destroying a piece of content, make sure you don't link to it on your site. Look for any other external sites that may have linked to it. You can always email them and ask them to link to something else. If you're redirecting, so if, for example, if we've done, how many times have we written, like, something about the best way to build links or how to do guest posts or something like that on SEJ, right? So if we take 10 of those posts that we've done that are all chopped up, turn them into one great chapter, right? And redirect all those links to that, well, we don't want to have links on our site pointing to those old posts, which then redirect. So what we want to do is update those all to the new post as well. It really helps from a findability perspective, but more so, the more 301 redirects you have on your site, especially a WordPress oriented site or a dynamic site, the more of a server load you're going to get. That's going to be an issue long term. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading through the rest of these. I use a few tools to check SEO, and the amount of keywords to use varies. One tool sometimes says that I use too much. The other time says that I use too little keywords. Is there an ideal number of keywords to use, and how many times to use them on a page? So let's talk about the first part, Danny, because I had a lot of questions about domain authority, keyword frequency, stuff like that, like really, really old, outdated terms.
Right.
So how do you feel about counting keywords?
I'm totally opposed to the whole idea of keyword density. I think it's really outdated. Um, tools, one of the problem with tools is they try to sell you on their tool. So they try to convince you that, there's a perfect formula for, content and keyword usage. There just isn't. Honestly, the best way to go is just to write organically, because if you're writing about a topic, the keyword should show up naturally. And if basically you want to really focus on, making sure your keyword is in your headline, obviously in the meta description or your snippet, and you probably want it, within the first, couple of paragraphs of your opening. That's about it. You don't want to just overkill it, because then you start to look pretty spammy, and we get back to like the old days of SEO. And it's just the case that, just write naturally. The best way to do it is to read it out loud to yourself, and if it sounds natural, that's a good thing. Like, you don't want to sound like I'm just stuffing in the word SEO every other sentence here just for the sake of ranking for SEO or whatever the keyword may be.
Excellent. Next and final question. By the way, I totally agree. Look at topical relevance at the end of the day, in addition to what you're planning from a keyword perspective. And then also look for modifiers. Like, just go to my favorite tool for that is the thesaurus. So just look for different ways to talk about the subject, like you normally would when you're writing a paper and you don't want to be too redundant. Okay.
And one other tool that you should also use is I really love the Hemingway app. That's more of a grammar tool though, but I think that is very helpful too, just in terms of making sure that you're writing in a very understandable way, because it sort of grades, your level from like a, grade. Are you writing a grade 9 level or a grade 6 level? So it can be helpful for just for that too, in terms of making sure that you're on, thinking about your audience first.
That's very interesting. And sometimes you do want to write for a lower grade level, dependent upon the site that you were working with, not
Yeah,
necessarily always collegiate level
yep,
grammar.
yep.
Okay, next question and final, I promise, is that okay, we had two people that asked very similar questions. One recently repointed 200 plus old non-performing, non-ranking posts to their blog landing page. So they redirected all of their non-performing stuff to one blog landing page,
Hmm.
and they saw a significant visibility drop in SEM rush the following day. Okay, so another question says that they've redirected a ton of their unperforming posts to their homepage. Saw something similar. So
Hmm.
I'll hand this off to you, Danny.
Okay. Well, in the first case with SCM Rush, they're not actually, I mean, they're estimating. So you want to look at your own analytics for that. Um, in terms of the actual traffic that you're getting, I wouldn't worry too much about third-party tools assessment of your visibility. I never do personally. It may be different for Lauren, but that's not a concern. In the case, of redirecting old stuff to your homepage, that's, as I talked about in the presentation, that's the case where it's more of, it's not really going to help you from an SEO perspective, because that's more of a, someone's going to land on this page and I'd rather them land on a page rather than a 404 page. So you're not going to actually get much of that authority if it's not on the same topic. So that could explain, like, if you're not seeing any benefit from it, again, and so you have to go from topic A to topic A. If you're going just like randomly redirecting a whole bunch of pages to whether it's your homepage or a category page, you're not going to see as much of a benefit from that. And especially if you didn't really have any authority from those pages anyway, I'd have to, check your analytics individually for that. But, if those pages didn't have much, for lack of a better word, juice to them, you're not going to get much of a benefit.
Yeah, so also when you redirect mass pages to your homepage, Google can pick that up as a soft 404 error.
Right.
Meaning that they're not necessarily following that redirect, and you're not necessarily redirecting that link juice over to the homepage, but more so you're flooding Google with a lot of error results. And what I've seen, this actually happened with someone about 6 months ago, is that first they went through and did a pretty aggressive URL rewrite, which led to a ton of 301s, right? And at the same time, they took down their blog and they redirected it to their homepage. What happened is that the blog had more pages on it than the rest of the site, which meant that there were about 10x software 4 errors than pages which exist on the site itself. And then the pages which previously existed and were indexed in Google on the site had gone through a series of 301s. We found that Google had a very hard time picking up those 301s because of the amounts of other redirects, 301s from all of the blog posts to the homepage, which were 404s. Essentially, they ignored all the 301s on the site. Because first of all, those were done around the same time. So never make critical changes to your site infrastructure, multiple critical changes to your site infrastructure at once.
Mm.
And then secondly, what I've found is by doing this, by redirecting multiple blog posts, your whole blog or 200 plus posts to the homepage or like a specific landing page makes more sense. But especially the homepage, that's going to goof up the way that Google crawls, updates, and indexes your entire site. So please do not do that. I would rather see folks, if you're gonna cut your blog, if you're gonna cut bait on a blog project, redirect all that to /blog and have a message there that, yada yada, we've taken down our blog, but here are 6 links to the best pieces of content that you should read on our site. So essentially, you're redirecting all of that to a page, which then funnels that link juice to targeted parts of the site. Sorry, I like saying that word. And yeah, that's really one of the best ways to go there. If you are if you are redirecting handfuls of posts, look into options like redirecting to a category page or something like that. If there's not a relevant consolidated hero post that you can redirect to, if it's total crap that you need to get rid of, like some stuff people had done 10 years ago, no one knew about it, whatever, try redirecting them to a category or just 410ing them. Again, the 410 is an instant sign to Google that this has been taken down and it's going to be down indefinitely. So they don't have to try to figure that out for you. And that's it. Thanks everyone for dropping in. Thanks Danny for dropping all this knowledge. Again, where can the folks that are still on the webinar find you online?
At Mr. Danny Goodwin.
Cool. Just to let everyone know, we have all your questions. If we didn't get to them, what we're going to try to do, like I said, there were a lot of them. We're going to try to consolidate them in the specific overarching questions that Danny can then answer accordingly. We're going to be sending the deck along with the video and doing a wrap-up post on Search Engine Journal all about what we've done through this strategy. And so you can see it afterwards and then look at ways to possibly apply this to your own projects. And our next SEJ Think Tank webinar is going to be with Julia McCoy of Express Writers. It's going to be on April 10th, which is coincidentally my son's birthday. That's kind of cool. And
nice.
It's going to be based on the do nots of SEO. 7 terrible, no good SEO tactics to abandon forever. And I honestly, I think that's a great part 2 for this. So
Yes.
Please make sure you sign up for our next Think Tank webinar with Julia McCoy from Express Writers to talk about what you should not be doing in SEO and just abandon that forever. And we'll see you on April 10th. Anything you'd like to say before we sign off, Danny?
Just that I'm super excited about that. I'll actually be moderating Julia's webinar, and she's awesome, and she's one of our regular writers. So if you haven't read any of her stuff, definitely check her out on Search Engine Journal. And I hope to see all of you guys there.
Awesome. And once we shut this down, everyone's going to get a quick survey. If you could take a minute, 30 seconds to a minute to just fill that out. Let us know how you enjoyed today's webinar and how we can make things better. That would be fantastic feedback. Again, thank you very much. Signing off and have a good one.